The Sunday after Grana died, Jacy went to church and stood up with the choir. She didn't wear her white Bride of Innocence robe like everyone else, or tie her hair back in a regulation ponytail. The congregation sat stiff and drab, rows of good wool suits kept fresh in mothballs, fussy flowered skirts with elastic waists. Jacy faced them down in jeans and her favorite t-shirt, skin-tight, lime green, and around her breasts, the outline of a martini glass with 2 olives in it, one for each nipple. Her red hair frothed down her back and fizzed over her shoulders. Grana wouldn't have a service here. The people in the pews wouldn't line up to look into the casket, cross themselves, and touch the old lady's waxy, wrinkled fingers. They wouldn't give Jacy hugs flowered with freesia perfume or Old Spice aftershave. And they wouldn't whisper syrupy sympathy about how hard it must be, all her family gone when she was still so young. They wouldn't troop outside to watch the casket lowered into the cemetery plot Grana and Gramps had bought years before Jacy was born. The church said you had to wait for God's will. Pain didn't matter. The church said anybody who dared to take her life into her own hands would go into the everlasting fire. Grana had told Jacy to tell the truth anyway, right before her steady old fingers counted too many sleeping pills out of the bottle. The pale faces blurred in the pews, but Jacy didn't rub her stinging eyes. The needle jabs of all the stairs pricked at her bare arms. The old priest's glare tried to wind like a rope around her throat and chest. How dare you come here like this after what you did? How dare you stand there and look like yourself? They wanted to rub, slice her out of the dim, incense-smelling room, out of the picture of the choir in their pure, clean, matching robes, out of the sight of the sad-faced, bloody-browed Jesus on the cross. They wanted her gone from the dusty pew where Grandma had brought her every Sunday since before Jacy could walk. They didn't want Jacy inside this house of God, the same way they didn't want Grandma outside, in the plot she and Gramps had bought all those years ago, where she had planned to lie in the smooth, cold earth next to her husband. But they hadn't been there, the choir or the priest, or any of the mothball-smelling suits or fussy skirts. They hadn't sat by Grandma's bed and watched the hand-crocheted blanket squares jerking up and down as Grandma breathed. They hadn't heard her whisper how it felt like somebody had stuck a hot poker inside her ribs and was scraping it around. They hadn't watched all her laughter shrivel up and blow away. They remembered her laugh, didn't they? Jacy would never forget it. It had been her sunshine every day she could remember. And they hadn't been there the last night either, when Jacy held up the water for Grandma to sip and wash the sleeping pills down, and Grandma's eyes closed and the jerky up and down smoothed out slowly, so slowly, and then so gently stopped. No more hot poker, no cold earth and heavy gravestone, no everlasting fire. Only the fire Jacy had promised, the one that turned Grandma's body into ash. Now, one last time, Jacy looked out at the pew where she and Grandma had sat every Sunday fingering rosary beads. The two of them had prayed together the way they did everything else. One last time, Jacy faced all the staring eyes down. Here I am. See it. Grandma would be scattered on the wind. Jacy had promised her that. Today, two women would go out into the world together. In Jacy's head, she heard her Grandma's laughter.